Welcome to another episode of the Bible Explained. I wanted to encourage you, if you have not seen the previous episodes and you don't have a lead up to this, I would encourage you to go and check out those previous episodes. That would be Genesis chapter 20. This is Genesis 21, and that is the birth of Isaac. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said. The Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham, and in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. So this is the story of a woman who she's a little bit old, but she's very acutely aware that she's probably not going to have a kid. And so basically she prays to God and keeps saying, I want a kid, I want a kid, I want a kid. And God says, yeah, you don't have to worry about it. You're going to have a kid. But they become impatient. So we're going to continue this story here. We're going to talk about this. But that's just like kind of a little bit of background data for you, a little bit of background information on what exactly is going on. And so the key players here are Abraham and Sarah, and God, of course, talking to Sarah. And so we're going to move on to verse 3. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah that bore him. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. So there you go. We have God's promise in action. The good Lord did promise Sarah that she would have a child, and she bore a son for Abraham. And so there you are. There's the background information for literally everything that's going on. And Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everybody who hears this will laugh with me. Verse 7, and she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in the old age. Which is a quotation. It is basically trying to emphasize and glorify God's promise. It's explaining this. So we take a look at the first few verses here. We're looking at 1 through 4, right? Let's exclude verse 6 and 7. And if you excluded verse 6 and 7, you would still get the point, right? Like you would still get the absolute point of what happened. This lady and this guy had a kid because God promised them that they would have a kid. But verse 6 and 7 are there to, one, glorify God in what he had done for these individuals and keeping his promise. But two, and more importantly, it is to set the stage that she was very, very old, and this is actually more of a miracle than anything else. It's not just happenstance that she actually had a kid. And that can be emphasized in verse 7. Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children, yet I have borne him a son in his old age? And so there you go. A very, very, very old man having a child. Hagar and Ishmael sent away. So, verse 8, excuse me, the child grew and was weaned, and one day Isaac was weaned. Abraham held a great feast. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking, and she said to Abraham, get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share the inheritance with my son Isaac. So we have a little bit of an issue here. We have a little bit of a disaster. We have an individual group of people who are coming in on what the child is going to deserve. The most important takeaway here is, in ancient times, inheritance was very, very important. So if you had your own child, whatever your child was, in 99% of cases was a male, the male would inherit everything. And there we have right here, we have Sarah telling Abraham that she wants him to get rid of that slave woman and their son because she feels intimidated about this, that this could come in against her inheritance and her family and her child. Verse 11, this matter distressed Abraham greatly, because it concerned his son. But God said to him, do not be distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. And I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring. And so here we go. We have the reasoning, we have the logic, we have something very, very important that is discussed here. And it is unfortunately the comeuppance of somebody's choices. And so because Abraham was very, very impatient, and because Sarah maybe couldn't have bore a son, or they didn't fully trust God at the time to give them a son, they unfortunately had a child with the slave woman, and now the good Lord does have to take care of this child, because it is Abraham's offspring, and God promised Abraham that he would make him a nation of his people. And so unfortunately the son is one of his people, despite not being from Sarah. Chapter 21, again, we are on verse 14. Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He sent them on her shoulders and sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered the desert of Beersheba. When the water and the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. She went off and sat down a bow shot away, for she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. And as she sat there, she began to sob. God heard the boy crying, and an angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies here. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went to fill the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. While he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt. And so here we are. Do not be concerned with your other child. Do not be concerned with the slave that you had. You know, I will take care of them. They will become a nation. So Abraham, with a clear conscience, sent them on their way. But I'm quite sure that he did not inform Hagar of the situation. Otherwise, Hagar may or may not have been a little bit more receptive to the fact that they had to leave and stroll out into a desert. And you can see the situation that they get into. The fact that this is all highlighted is highlighted for a reason. That reason is that it's trying to emphasize and show that the good Lord did not abandon them. And Hagar thought that they were going to die in the desert because there wasn't enough water to survive on. And so, you know, you see Hagar puts the kid down and starts dwelling in their own sorrow. But this isn't to be taken because the good Lord comes down and sends an angel of the Lord, which this is pretty important too. In regards to angel of God or angel of the Lord, things like that, that is like a representative of God. So God himself is not speaking personally. God himself has not come down, but like an angel themselves that represent God and speaks for God. And so they are told that the boy will make into a great nation. So that's really, really important. Probably a relief on someone's shoulders when they're stranded in the desert. Hey, you're not going to die. You're actually going to become a great nation. So it's very important that we have these verses in the Bible, because we have two young sons that will be uplifted and be made into great nations. And so we're going to move on, and we have the Treaty of Beersheba. I'm not the best at Hebrew and ancient pronunciations of the Middle East, so you have to forgive me. We're on verse 22. And at the time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, said to Abraham, God is with you in everything you do. Now, swear to me here before God that you do not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants. Show me the country where you reside as a foreigner, the same kindness I have shown to you. And Abraham said, I swear it. Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about the well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. But Abimelech said, I don't know who has done this. You did not tell me, and I heard about it only today. And so Abraham brought sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a treaty. Abraham set apart 7 ewe lambs from the flock. Abimelech asked Abraham, what is the meaning of the 7 ewe lambs that have been set apart by themselves? He replied, accept these 7 lambs from my hand as a witness that I dug the well. So that place was called Beersheba, because the two men swore an oath here. And after that treaty had been made, Beersheba and Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, returned to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham had planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and he called on the name of the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time. And so here we go. Beersheba means the well of 7, or like a well oath. It's interchangeable. And so basically this treaty is just being put in place. It's again being set in stone. It's very important because we have to look at every single verse that gets put into the Bible, every single chapter, and we have to note the connotations associated with it. So why is there a treaty being put in here right after we got a story of Abraham's sons and one son almost dying in the desert but being raised up to become a nation? This is going to set the story and set the character of Abraham yet again and reinforce that notion. And it's going to set the foundation for the next few chapters in all likelihood. So it shows how treaties were actually made, formed, and done in ancient times. And it shows that they do keep their words with each other without having to go to war. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Not the most exciting chapter to discuss this week, but all important and all the same. It is important to note that Abraham had 2 sons, and both the sons are going to rise up and become great nations. If you guys would like to go through each verse, each line, word by word, you can feel free to, but they're pretty self-explanatory this week. The only thing that I will leave you with is that remember, whenever anything is mentioned in the Bible, it was scrutinized by thousands and thousands of people over hundreds of years forming the Bible itself, going through scrolls. And somebody thought this was important enough to write down, and so they did. So we should check into everything that has been written down because it has been scrutinized so much. So there you go. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. God bless you, and I hope to see you back here again for another Bible Explained.